The NFC South was the only division with three 10-win teams in 2010. The Saints came in as defending Super Bowl champions, returned to the playoffs, but as we all know, they were bounced in the first round of the playoffs. The Falcons won the division and the #1 seed with a 13-3 regular season record, but were eliminated in the divisional round by the eventual champion Packers. And the Bucs' future certainly looks bright after they won a surprising 10 games. And then, of course, at the under end of the spectrum are the Panthers, who posted a 2-14 record and will have the first pick in this year's draft. Here now with more on the division is ESPN.com NFC South blogger Pat Yasinskis. Pat, let's start from the bottom up with the Panthers. What are you hearing about what Carolina's planning to do with that #1 overall pick?
Well, Michael, I think right now it's a two-man race between the two defensive linemen, Nick Fairley and Daquan Bowers. However, heading into the Combine, I think the Panthers are trying to keep an open mind. The wild card in all this is the quarterback position. They obviously have a big need there. And if Blaine Garrett or Blaine Garbett or Cam Newton can go in and have a great Combine and some good individual interviews, possibly they could vault into that #1 overall position. But I think when all is said and done, I think the Carolina Panthers will probably take one of those defensive linemen and then go out and get a veteran quarterback in a trade or through free agency, whether it's a Donovan McNabb or a Kevin Cobb or someone like that, and bring in a veteran to run that offense.
Yeah, that quarterback position certainly is the difference between the Panthers and the rest of the division. The Bucs have their long-term answer at quarterback, so what's their biggest issue heading into the offseason?
Well, I think it's obviously their pass rush. They need to get after the quarterback. That was a problem last season. Their offense is in pretty good shape. Josh Freeman had a great season. They've got some good young skill players, but I think they need some defensive ends who can bring a pass rush. Last year, they invested their first 2 draft picks into defensive tackles. I think you could see something similar this year. I'm not saying it'll be their first 2 picks, but I think they will invest a couple of draft picks in defensive ends and maybe try to sign a free agent defensive end as well. Ryan Kerrigan and Adrian Claiborne are the 2 guys you hear most often associated with them for the first round, and I think those are very real possibilities.
It was just a year ago that the Saints were celebrating their first championship. What issue is most pressing for them in the offseason?
Well, defensive end is definitely a possibility there for them, and that's been brought up a lot, and I could see them going that way. But I think the running game is also an issue. Last year it was not very consistent. They had some injuries. Pierre Thomas, Reggie Bush were both banged up and missed a lot of the time. Chris Ivory came in and did a nice job, but they like a backfield by committee. I think that Pierre Thomas is probably on his way out as a free agent. I think Reggie Bush stays, gets restructured. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if they draft a running back first round, and Mark Ingram out of Alabama could be sitting there. That's a guy to keep an eye on.
And speaking of the draft, you look at the job that Thomas Dimitroff and Mike Smith have done with the Falcons, building through the draft and augmenting those picks with free agents. What needs are the Falcons looking to address in the draft?
Well, once again, and this is becoming a theme in the NFC South, pass rush. And I think the Falcons, more so than anybody, need to address this. John Abraham is 32 years old. He had a nice season last year, but he really didn't get much help for the rest of the defensive line. And I think that the Falcons need to get his heir apparent, need to get a playmaker on that defensive line, and I think they'll go defensive end in the first round.
And when you talk about a division with those kind of quarterbacks, getting a good pass rush certainly makes a lot of sense. Pat, thanks for the knowledge.